Hi guys, it's Clarice, and today I know we're a little bit late, but today we're going to be doing something different here for our live. I am going to be doing or painting this cute little seascape scene happening, and this is mainly because I have a project that I need to get ready for, and this was my practice item. And now we're going to go ahead and create this on another sheet of paper. And I've decided I'm going to do a couple of amendments to this. So we're going to get into the whole blending of the skies, then get into the water bit, and then our nice little greenery happening at the bottom over here. Let's see what else. I decided to use some watercolor, which has some sort of gouache-like elements in it. So you can see that some of the flowers here kind of stand out because I'm sure it's got a little bit of white in it. Anyways, I like it because it pops out really nicely against the dark greens. So that's what we're going to be doing. Before I start really quickly, let's talk about the supplies. For supplies, I'm going to be using my White Nights right here. And I'll let you guys know which colors. For brushes, I'm going to be using Princeton brushes where we've got the round Velvetouch number 4. We've got the oval wash just to get my background damp and ready. We've got the Princeton Neptune number 6. And let's see what else. Oh yes. So the light colors that I was using, that's from the mailing set of 52 watercolors. I love this set. It's going to be featured in a big upcoming project of mine, so stay tuned for that. But for now, I really liked using the apricot, I think the peach blossom, and I believe it was the lavender purple right here for the flowers. So we're going to start, and I think you can see my sheet pretty well. Let me just lift this up a little bit. My phone arm is super noisy. Anyways, let's begin. So starting off with dampening our sheet, I'm going to get ready for our nice, beautiful sky. Let me just adjust this one more time to make sure we're good. And we can now begin. One more time. And I can bring my colors here so you guys can see that. And so because this live is happening over my phone, I just want to alert everyone, if you have any comments or questions, the phone's a little bit finicky about alerting me. So just maybe put it in the comments. This way I can always get to it a little bit later. And yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, so don't forget paper towel as well, guys. We need paper towel for such things because it is helpful to take off any color we might not need. Oh, and actually one more second. I forgot to get some clean water. So actually, why am I putting it there? I'll just keep it here. Keep this here and we begin. Okay, so I have a basic idea of what I want to do for my seascape. So like I mentioned in the beginning here, we're going to be doing the top blending of skies. I want to blend this a lot nicer with softer blues maybe. Although I kind of like that pop of blue, but we'll see how this goes. The orange, because it's more of a sunset-y kind of look, and I would bring the orange lower with a little bit of a pink in the back just to get those beautiful, gorgeous pinks and oranges. And then we can sort of go back into blues at the bottom, or you can even bleed the pink a little bit lower, then get into the blues. And then we've got this nice, I think this is yellow ochre. No, this is raw sienna. raw sienna for our sandy area, and then we've got some nice greens and such happening here. And like I mentioned, some dotted or impressionistic looking flowers happening too. Okay, so on that note, let's begin. Oh, paper is Baohong watercolor paper, just FYI, because I'm just realizing I did not mention paper. Okay, so I'm going to start off with dampening the top. And I'm bringing it down just a little bit. Actually, no, I'm bringing it down all the way to about here. Now comes the fun part of adding color. So I'm going to be adding, I'll just move all this stuff out of the way. I'm going to be adding, let's see, I like the turquoise that we used. Yeah, so let's use the, instead of turquoise, I'm going to switch it out for bright blue and cerulean. So let's start off with cerulean first. So getting that color, dropping it in, and I'm kind of swooshing it like this. And I'm really pressing down and spreading it around. So this is a lot of wet on wet happening. I'm going to get a little bit of that cerulean happening around here. Let's adjust this a little bit. Then we're getting some of that blue, bright blue, and I'm dropping that in within the cerulean that we've just added. Get a little bit of that into our water as well. And now I'm washing off my brush. I'm going to take off any excess color that I feel is not needed. So all I'm doing is little swipes and then dabbing it onto my paper towel. Same thing at the top. What I'm going to be doing is, you can see some of the color bleeding into the paper. I'm going to take that away so we have more smoother transitions happening in the sky. Also notice the white space I have happening in there, and that's mainly because once this dries up, you're going to notice that the color is kind of blooming all over the place. So that's why. Now we're getting immediately into golden deep, and I'm going to drop that golden deep right here. I'm going to get a little bit of that golden deep happening maybe around here. Actually, might not even need it there because we're then going into carmine. So I got some carmine in here. I'm going to drop that in here. So this is a very muted version of color. We're allowing it to bleed beyond our horizon line so we can get a little bit of like a reflection happening in the water. So we've got our gorgeous blending happening here. So take some time to really go back in, wash off the color from your brush, go back in, dab on your paper towel, and kind of really swipe to get some prettier blends happening. Now you got to make sure that you don't have too much water on your brush, because if you have water on your brush, what's going to happen is you're adding water onto a damp surface, and then you are possibly going to get some water stains, which might not be the prettiest. I'm also swiping the orange into the pink like this, just to kind of get some nice blending. You can also swipe some color off from the sky if you wish. Oops, I had some orange on there. So make sure your brush is clean before you try that. Now I'm getting a little bit more carmine and I want to add that over here. Again, the beauty of something like this, adding it when it's damp, is it gives you a beautiful progression without you having to do too much work. And the less strokes you have, the better. So I want to intensify some of the orange just a little bit. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do exactly what I did with the blue at the top here. I'm going to take Titan Red, which is a slightly darker version of our Golden Deep, and I'm going to drop that into the sky here. And again, washing off our brush. And this time, you know what? Instead of the 6, I'm going to take the number 4. So my brush is damp. No color on it. I'm just going to lightly graze, not graze, but swipe to kind of really blend the orange in, or the Titan Red into the Golden Deep. So little swipes of, little strokes that are like little swipes is what I'm trying to say. And you can have that nice color blend into the pink a little bit. So you're getting those nice expressive skies happening. So again, one more time, I am going to get a little bit of the carmine and drop that in here. Kind of blending some of that carmine into the lower portion here. And then I'm going to get a little bit of the cerulean and drop that in here at the base. Cerulean mixing with carmine gives you a really pretty purple color. And so that's why I don't mind if the two of them blend in. I'm going to get a little bit of the bright blue, and we are going to get some strokes just to kind of highlight the water a bit. So I'm just doing little lines right now. And the perfect time to do this is now, mainly because it is damp. So same idea that we did with the skies, or the same technique that we used with the sky, we're using that here for the water. Now, the more it dries up, I suggest getting more of a drier version of the color and then kind of just going to the side and swiping in. So you get these nice thin little lines that kind of indicate ripples in the water. So fuss about and see where you want it to happen. Now I'm noticing some of the blue is kind of slowly bleeding into the pink, so I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is just get my number 6, making sure I don't have any color on it, washing it off, and then dabbing it onto paper towel. Get a cleaner one. I'm going to kind of mix it in. And then continuing on with our little strokes of blue. So blending this in as well. Now, the further back it is, the closer the line should be. The closer it is, the further apart. Yeah, the further apart it should be, spaced out, I mean. So keep that in mind very loosely. We're not going for super detailed stuff here, so I'm not focusing too much on that. So when you're adding this color to this damp surface, you're trying to get more of a drier, more opaque color on your brush. This way, when you drop it in, it doesn't blend in right away. And the more you layer like this, the darker these areas will be. It's the same concept we use in flowers as well for our flower centers. This is just for water. I'm just kind of bringing this down a bit, blending it in and bringing it down. Now this area right here is where we're going to be doing our weeds or plants or whatever you want to call it. So for this, I would like to use the number 6 for the first initial lay, because I like to get the nice thicker backgrounds, and then we go in with the number 4 to get the more detailed strokes, kind of like what we did here with our water. And then let's see what else. We'll keep the horizon or the little mountain bits right here for the very end, just to make sure that everything is dried off really well. And so yeah, we can start off with this. In fact, let's start off with the sand. So I mentioned for the sand I used raw sienna. So what I'm going to do is get some raw sienna on my number 6. And then using the oval brush, which is great, you can use it like a flat brush. I'm going to dampen this area right here. Now you're going to notice that when we add the yellow ochre to the areas where the blue has seeped in, it's going to start looking green, which kind of works in our favor because we want the weeds and such to look green or to be green. So here we go. Let's start off at the very bottom. So I'm always hold your brush sideways so you can get more coverage with less strokes. We're using the same stroke style that we did for the sky. And I would like for it to be darkest, closest to us. And then as we go up higher, we're getting lighter. So start off at the bottom because that's where we need it to be darkest. And then without adding any more color, you're slowly, gradually going up. And then that's how you kind of get a lighter look, because you're using up all the color that you have on your brush without getting any more. And yeah, it's as it gets used up, there's less left. So you're getting a lighter transition. Okay, so get some of this. We don't really need to focus too much on the details for the sand, mainly because the main show point over here is going to be the plants or the weeds or whatever you want to call them. Okay, fabulous. So let's move on to doing the plants now. So I mentioned we'll start off with the number 6 first and then progress onto the rest. So let's get I'm going to get the chromium oxide, and chromium oxide is a very muted sort of green. This is what it looks like right here. And I think it works great to start off using it just for basic strokes in the back. And then you add the darker green in the front using the number 4 to get your more detailed lines and create some beautiful depth happening. Okay, so let's start off with that. And take a seat for this. Now just make sure that things are semi-dried because we don't want too much of a bloom happening in here. We just want enough to give us that nice soft look, but we don't want it to completely blend into the area. So let's start off with, I don't know, let's start here, I guess. So I'm going to start very basic, adding little strokes. And if it blends into the sand, you know what? Beautiful, because and I'm going to start from the bottom and like lift it up towards the water area. This way the color sticks at the top and doesn't blend so much into the bottom. Because if I went from top bottom, it would kind of bleed in. So we're starting from the down up. And we want the tallest bits of grass or weed to be down here. And then as we're going to the center, it's getting shorter. So that was our first layer. I'm going to add a little bit more, and we're slowly building up on our foliage here. And this is only using the number 6 for now because we want to get the thicker strokes for more coverage. And then we're going to switch to our number 4 so we get thinner strokes and get to kind of really add those shadow areas into our foliage. So if you're just joining in right now and wondering why I'm not responding, I'm doing this live on my phone. I know it's not the best quality right now, but this is what I have on hand for today because I've got an upcoming event today, and I wanted to honor the live for July instead of just canceling it out and being a no-show. But yeah, so let's do this. So yeah, if you have any questions, just make sure you have them in the comments, and this way I can get back to you. Okay, so I love the blend that's happening. We're going to build up on some of this kind of foliage happening here just to get this effect that we have. So we're going to get a little bit more of that color because this is our base color. And when you wait for things to dry and then go back in and add color, you're just getting a darker rendition and a more clear version of the strokes that you're adding. So it's not blending in right away. Plus it's darker because we're sort of layering. Now I don't want to cover up every little spot because we still have about a couple more layers to do in this. I'm going to switch my brush now and get the number 4, and we are getting some of the green. And the green is it's one of my favorites from White Nights, and it's called green. This is what it looks like. And going to get that from here, the color cake. And I'm going to start from the bottom at the very top. So I'm just going to drop some here. I want to kind of really highlight where the weed meets at the bottom, kind of paving a way almost. Doesn't have to be straight. Mine is kind of a little bit curved here. And as I'm getting closer to these guys, what I'm going to do is, instead of dotting it, I'm going to lightly, yeah, actually, you know what? Instead of sending it up, we're going to do the opposite because now I want the color to collect at the bottom. So getting some more green. So the more you do things like this, the more you'll realize how to do your strokes to get certain effects, darker areas, less strokes, where to start your stroke from, because these are all important things, but you only learn these things the more you practice, the more you pick up the brush, the more you try things out and really pay attention to details like this, especially because we are doing more of a loose style of painting, which can be very tricky if you're not paying attention to things like this, because then what happens is you're going to get a blob of color, or you're going to get too much, what's the word? Too much water stains, too many water stains, things like that. So you need to pay a little bit of attention to technique. So I'm going to lightly pull from down up at the top here. I'm switching it up a bit because we've got a nice darker area happening at the edge or at the tip. So I don't want to get more at the bottom. You can always intensify by adding more. This is just wet on wet layering. I'm giving it more for a gradient so that at the end we can kind of add more details happening there. I would have liked for this area to be a little bit shorter, but it just happened to be this tall. So if you're able to control the size and make it a tad bit shorter, might be too late in the game though. That's too tall now, but I couldn't help myself. Sometimes you're painting and you're like, you know, it's against better judgment and you still go for it. Okay, I'm going to focus a little bit more on these guys at the front now. I want to take full advantage of the fact that this is damp and going to give us some really nice results if we get into it right now. This is the quick technique of just dabbing to get darker spots happening at the bottom, showing those bunches of weed or grass kind of at the bottom. If you want to give your weed a little bit more flair, instead of just going straight up, maybe go off to the side. And then once we're done this layer, we're going to have to go darker. And so we will be introducing some, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, burnt sienna, mixing it with the green to get that darker feel. But for now, let's just get a little bit of this in. And then add some over here. So this is where we're going to do a little bit more of that those dry brush strokes, because things are still damp. So I'm getting mainly color on here directly from my color cake, and I'm going to do my little strokes, but really pressing down to get those nice little textures happening within these leaves, and also to get that nice pop of color as well. This way, when the background is damp, it retains the shape as opposed to blending in, which is what we don't want. We want people to be able to see these guys. And we'll do the same dry technique for little rocks at the bottom, kind of like what I did over here. Now, I like to have my little bits that are nice and thin and just kind of hanging like that, like little reeds maybe. I feel like they always add such a beautiful, delicate feel to artwork. Kind of like these are my tendrils, but for a seascape. Let's go with that. Okay, let's move on to the next. So now next layer, we're now adding some of that burnt sienna. Was it burnt sienna? Yes, burnt sienna in with our green. And I'm honestly just mixing it in the color cakes themselves and using the same brush. Feel free to use a smaller brush if you want. I'm lightly going in and adding little strokes starting from the very bottom or the smallest area, our focal point, better description. And I'm starting off at the bottom. So starting from the bottom up. Feel free to use a smaller brush. I think I mentioned that already. That'll just give you thinner strokes, and then you can progressively get thicker as you go, as we come down. And then we're just gonna dot the area here to kind of add a little bit of imperfection, or even little natural looking pieces of grass that are kind of just growing on the outskirts maybe. And I'm continuing on with that same mix, and where I'm doing the other side now. And I'm lightly grazing because I've not switched out my brush. So I'm being a little bit of a daredevil here and using the same brush to start from the very edge and then go down. Okay, so now for these ones at the very edge, I want it to be a lot darker than what we have there. Before I do that, let me just get a little bit of brown happening here at the bottoms. And I'm just quickly dabbing it in. Because if you take your sweet time dabbing it in, it's going to kind of look very intentional and forced. So we're just dotting it in. So we get that nice pathway. And as it comes closer, actually, what I'm going to do is just wash up most of the color, and I'm kind of like blending it into the sand. So what I'll do is get a little bit more of that brown. And then it's at this point where we're getting more of that brown, and we will do our little rock formations. So for instance, using the leftover brown that I have, I'm just going to go ahead and do something like, this. Notice how dry it is. Notice how some of it kind of blends in with the sand. And that's the kind of texture I want in these areas. For like the hard edges, what I'm doing is just taking a damp brush and lightly blending it in. Because I don't want the whole entire thing to be hard edged. I want some idea of blending. And these guys can stay as is. I like that texture that it adds. Getting a little bit more of the brown, and I'm just going to add some. See, this has too much water in it. So I'm going to get more brown and kind of just do loose strokes like this. And then washing off everything from my brush and blending this into sand. Sometimes it takes a couple of little scrubs on your color cake before you can get some color. Okay, so now final step with the with the little strokes. So I'm going to get more of the brown, less of the green, mix that up, and then add it in. So let me just mix a little bit of that onto my palette, buried with brushes on the side. So this is how dark it looks right now. Let me get some more brown, mix that in, get a nice dark green brown-ish color. And starting here. So I want to add more of these strokes starting at the very bottom. So, and they don't have to go all the way up. I just want the whole feel for there's so much happening here. Fill up that area with these beautiful rich color. Get some nice little dryish strokes as well. And you can even just paint it in if you just want to go ahead and cheat a bit. Okay, so now I need to mix a bit more paint because I ran out. Same, using that same nice dark color. I'm going to add some nice dark strokes so they overlap on our green here. So really prepping this area for some nice, beautiful, bright blooms, which we're going to get in a bit. Or pastel blooms, rather, because we're using pastel. And I'll just get a little bit of these strokes happening in between our leafy bits before we move on. And mainly at the bottom, so we are not losing our nice light green at the top. And then we can sort of leave it as is. Just intensify these a bit more. Then we can move on to doing the rest. So feel free to add more of the taller ones to the side here as well, covering up some of the greenery. And this is why I kind of left the ones at the edges a little bit more free and open. There we go. Okay, so now at this point, washing off my brush, let's talk a little bit about the horizon. So we're going to let this dry. And we're going to do the very scratchy, dryish feel that we did on our weed. And also, I think, where else did we do it? Oh, yes, on the waves. We're going to add that to this area here. So this should be fun, relaxing, and loose. Am I using indigo? Yes, I am. And I'm going to be using my number 4. So I'm getting indigo directly from the color cake, making sure my brush is not very damp. This way, when I add my little strokes in, I'm not getting like a nice smooth coverage. I'm getting more of dry coverage. But I'm pretty sure this first stroke of mine is going to be smooth. Let's see. Oh, not bad. Okay. So I'm just doing this to kind of create little mounds, leaving a little bit of white space. And you know what? When you leave it kind of like this, leaving that white space in between, it almost kind of gives it that impression of glisten, shadow, all that good stuff. And then we'll do some over here. I don't want to cover up the pink entirely. So I'm going to try and leave some open. And then we can kind of pull that down a bit. Let me see if I can get better coverage here. And I'm just lightly grazing to kind of extend it. You can even kind of give it, instead of having a straight line, like painting it in a straight line, you could actually just give it a little bit of a curve or a dip to make it look like it's kind of off to the side, kind of how I did it there. But I want to leave a little bit of pink. I'm torn. I'm going to add some here. This can also work as the shadow in the water. So we're kind of just going loosely back and forth with it. Then I'm very roughly washing off my brush, because then we're going to go ahead and create our background mountains, which are happening right there. So we don't want to touch the foreground, otherwise it's just going to blend and bleed into it right away. But let's try it anyways, because I know mine's pretty dry right now. So getting a very light color, I'm going to go in and in a very controlled manner paint these little mounds in. If we have a little bit of blending, I think it'll be pretty. So make, like for instance, I just touched this area here. It's not quite giving me much of a blend, but that's okay. I'm going to continue and take this all the way down here. I'll have a little bit of a mountain peeking here. We could have done this first, just FYI. But this is what I did for the last painting. And so in my head, I was like, we're doing that last because it worked out really well for me. Okay, now last bit, just gonna get a little bit more of the indigo, and I'm just dropping it into this bit here. And that's that. So we have majority of the items done. So now all that's left is to add some of our flowers onto the weed. So that's the last bit, and then we should be finished. So for that, I'm going to get my Princeton Heritage #1, and I've got the colors that I was telling you about. So this is the mailing set of 52, and they have some beautiful pastel colors. So we're using apricot, champagne yellow, actually no, not apricot, champagne yellow, peach blossom, and lavender purple. And I think those would really make our nice dark green strands stand out if we just add pops of that in. Also pulling from the color that we have here at the top. Yeah. Before I do that, I want to blend in some of this just a little bit into the bottom of the, like a reflection in the water. You can also choose to do this last. I'm just doing this now because I know it's damp and should work well. Okay, there we go. So let's get some of this color because now this is dry. So now is the perfect time to add color. So I'll start with the pink and getting it directly on here. Obviously, I'm just going to dot. I'm just adding tiny little dots, making sure I've got nice little blobs on my brush. Well, you got to get nice color on your brush so that when you add your little dot, it's a nice little round mound of color. Is my best way to explain it to you. Here we go. So kind of pepper it here and there. Such a pretty pink. It really stands out so nicely against the blue and also against the green. So hence it is my choice. I'm going to add a little bit more towards the ends here because we want to show that it's all around everywhere. Some at the top, some at the bottom, kind of really haphazardly indicating tall, short bunches of these beautiful weed-like flowers or wildflowers, whatever you want to call them. Now I don't want to use too much of it because we've got two other colors. We've got that beautiful purple and then we've got that lemonish sort of color. So I'm just dropping it in here and there so that we've got a peppering of this color. And now we also don't want to overdo the pink because we've got pink in the horizon. Next thing, we're doing the lavender haze. No, lavender purple. Lavender haze is Taylor Swift's song. Although I'm sure there's a color out there called lavender haze. Here we go. More purple. We're just dotting it. So very impressionistic, very freeing, very pretty to look at and also execute. Yes, you can feel pretty executing this. Dropping some just at the top. And some as it's going towards the edges. Peppering it in between our pinks. Now you want to try and control the size of your dots off in the distance because they need to be a lot tinier there just to get more depth happening. So this is where contrast and sizing really helps. So I always mention things like the way to create balance, depth, and make your composition interesting is to make sure you've got contrasting colors, contrasting sizes, contrasting brush strokes. And by contrasting brush strokes, I mean thicks and thins. Okay, this is coming along very pretty. Let's move on to the last color and then we allow this to dry. So the last color we're using is champagne yellow, which is like a peachy yellow. It's almost like a sand color. I don't quite have a yellow in this palette. Well, like a lemon rather. But it really makes things stand out really nicely as well. So I'm not complaining. This very impressionistic style is dreamy and fun. I personally love it because it reminds me of one of my favorite artists, Vincent van Gogh. So I'm going to add a little bit more to the tops. Feel free to sort of drop some in overlapping in some of the pink, some of the purples. This way, kind of really giving that semblance or that idea that things are overlapping and there's branches just on top of each other. Now, painting this on the sand isn't giving us the best results because obviously it's so close in color. So I'll probably get a little bit more of that pink and or purple and add that here at the bottom. But for the most part, this is pretty much the whole idea. Lots of great techniques used in here. And it's the same techniques that we use typically for our flowers as well, like I mentioned. So I hope you guys learned something from this and do end up doing this because this was fun for me and I hope it was fun for you too. Let me almost finish this and then I can check to see if anyone has any questions and such. Okay. We are done, guys. It's pretty, right? Anyways, I hope you guys like this and you end up doing it because I would love to see how yours turns out. I'm just going to check to see if I can see questions. Jen says, looks like somewhere I would love to be right now. Thanks, Jen. I know, me too. Okay, this keeps disappearing. I'm not sure if I can actually scroll back. Hi Clarice, I usually see you paint florals and this is the first time I'm seeing you paint a landscape. It is beautiful. Thanks. Oh, thank you, as I mentioned, I have a project. This is why I decided to do landscape for this because I needed to send this in. Let's see where that goes. And I had a chance to kind of test it out before doing it over live here. Hi, Usha. Okay, awesome. That's it. So as I said, if anyone has any questions, let me know in the comments below. And if not, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to hit the like button, guys, and we'll chat soon, okay? Thanks for joining in. Bye.